line oh uyu line rero mwana mene mwana wanzeru ukacha mama wa amatengazaje kusesa bakomo pamaiwaje
ukacha mama
early morning
amatengazaje
kusesa bakomo lamaiwaje
magolo wali amuya mikira
akutirine rero mwana mene mwana wanzeru
magolo wali amuya mikira
akutirine rero mwana mene mwana wanzeru line oh uyu line rero mwana mene mwana wanzeru
Agire gogo wana madingo Namuya mikira Kudina madingo mwana mene mwana wanzeru Agire gogo wana madingo Namuya mikira
Kudina madingo mwana mene
mwana wanzeru
Simuku na mako
Kawizi na
ne malota ine Bambo wanga tandisi na
salandeka Kawizi na
mwe ni malota ine Bambo wanga tamwali na
salandeka Gondo mama Gondo une mama mwe Gondo mama chalamanda
Tafera moenda we Gondo mama Gondo une mama mwe Gondo mama chalamanda utafera moenda we
Right, good afternoon, good evening, and of course, good morning, depending on where you are watching us from. It's another beautiful time on OY Media Scotland. For those of you that have joined us from OY Media in Ibadan, Nigeria, you are also most welcome, and people that are watching us on Facebook, or for those of you that are watching us also on YouTube. Thanks very much for joining in. There's a bit of technical stuff here that I will try to adjust ASAP. So please do stay on with us. Right, we apologize for that break. It's just like a technical section that's having a bit of check. So thank you very much for joining us again today. Of course, you know already that today you'll be having Alagba Femi Odedeyi from the Yoruba Referendum Committee. He will be the one that will be speaking to us. But today we'll actually be talking about Africa in the Global Village and the Yoruba Liberation Movement. There are some couple of issues that we're going to touch, but do have a sit back and I will bring your guest right in for you. Stay on with us, please. Right, thank you very much for joining us again today. Alagba Femi Odedeyi.
Thank you for welcoming me, and I appreciate our listeners and the producers and the host and everyone. We appreciate you and thank you.
Okay, you most welcome. I mean, today we'll be touching quite some number of issues, but the main focus is going to be about Africa in the global village and the Yoruba liberation movement. We've seen what is happening at the moment, especially on the international stage, and we want to look at that together and, of course, link that with the place of Yoruba as a nation, whether in or out of Nigeria, and very importantly also the routes that different movements are taking and to see what the implication of that will be along the line. But before jumping into the international stage, we're quickly going to touch base. That is, we're going to start from home before we take it into the international scene. And I'll first take it from your side, which is the Yoruba referendum cause that you are championing as the coordinator for Yoruba referendum committee. People want to know what's the progress so far and what should they be expecting.
Okay, well, we are making progress in the sense that after we have produced the posters, which we posted in several places in Osun and Ekiti states, we are now embarking on the process of direct engagement. Direct engagement in the sense that we want to engage the principal actors that will be responsible for the referendum, that is, the governors, the speakers of the houses of assembly, and some notable Yoruba leaders uh, to really trash out any issues that may arise or that any concerns that they may have. So it's going to be a direct engagement. We are working on that, and it should take place very soon. And because we believe that the whole process of Yoruba liberation needs the not just the buy-in, as they say, the buy-in of the stakeholders, but it's a strategic move that we can't simply ignore. And we cannot take the whole question of Yoruba referendum as an isolated case in the political firmament. So that's why we have not joined the bandwagon of those who are saying, no elections, there are no elections and all the rest of it, that the referendum itself is not just a technical issue, it's also a political process. Because when you say that you want people to determine how they want to govern themselves, that is politics. That is essentially what politics is. Unfortunately for us in Nigeria, they have reduced politics to bickering, inter-party and intra-party bickerings. So when you say politics, they will say whether you are APC or PDP or SDP or all the rest of it, and they will limit it at that. But essentially, politics is simply the way you govern yourself. And so in that process, we can't take the whole question of Yoruba autonomy or self-determination or federalism, take it out of the political context. It must be situated within it. And that's why we are trying our best to engage everyone that is involved in the process. And by putting out the posters, we also intend to put out more posters like that will spread across the length and breadth of Yoruba land, including Kwara and Kogi states. Because when we talk about Yoruba people or Yoruba nation in Nigeria or Yoruba autonomy or true federalism, we don't forget about Kwara and Kogi states, the Yoruba in Kwara and Kogi states, because since the colonial period, they have always been agitating to be part of the larger Western geopolitical Yoruba establishment. They were denied the process by the NPC government in the run up to the election, and they keep denying them till date. Even when they submitted a memorandum to the National Assembly to the effect that they should be considered, that they want to hold a referendum in their areas to determine whether they want to be part of us or not, the National Assembly didn't even consider it. The National Assembly is talking about changing of local governments and all the rest of changing the names of local governments and all that, without even addressing the determined wishes of the people to see where they want to belong. So we don't separate the Yoruba in Kwara and Kogi states from what we are doing. Of course, we recognize their peculiar situation. So our engagement is slow and steady, and we are trusting God and trusting His interest in what we are doing to push us forward. So, yeah, we are making progress. Let me put it that way. And like I said, our engagement, our direct engagement with critical sections of Yoruba political establishment is ongoing, and it will bear fruit. And of course, we will let you know once the fruit is already up and coming. Yes, so we are happy, we are glad.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So, if I
Yeah.
get you straight on, is that more poster will still be coming on, and
Yes,
you are arranging to meet with stakeholders within the Yoruba space
yes,
to speak to them about the cause and the movement.
yes,
Okay, people
yes.
will look forward to that. I know we always have you every 2 weeks,
Yeah,
so we should be able to get,
maybe
as things are
another
going,
information will come.
so we
Yes,
get a sort of a progress report.
yes,
Now, you did mention something about working with the governors and political players in Yoruba land. And that makes me to bring up this. We know IPOB
yeah,
in the southeast, which I mean, there have been quite news about them and things that they're doing around the southeast in order to liberate, as they put it, to liberate the people of the southeast of Nigeria. But of recent, especially with the Soludo's inauguration, there's a report in the nation that IPOB said they are ready to work not just only with Soludo, but other governors in the southeast. And they mentioned specifically that those governors, they should support a referendum for the people of the southeast. And when I read this, I there are two things that came straight to my mind, and I'll put them across to you. First of all, is the fact that if there was any group in Nigeria that has actually risen up and, so to say, if we can claim that they took arms and insisting that there will be no election, I'm sure we will pick IPOB among others. But now IPOB is turning around to say they are ready to work with the governors and the political players in the southeast towards that referendum. If my memory does me good as well, I remember that the Ninas in which a part of Yoruba group were part of also had this insistence that there was not going to be any election, that they will not allow any election. Now, IPOB has backtracked, so to say, if I can use that word, and other groups, especially from the south, east, south, south, southwest, have also been a bit quiet about the no election chant. Does that leave the southwest in the cold or in the rain on this issue about no election in 2023?
Well, I won't say it leaves the Southwest or the Yoruba in the cold. I will simply say that it leaves those in the Southwest that are clamoring for no elections in the cold. They are the ones that are left in the cold, in the sense that let's even leave aside the politicians and all the struggles they are waging between and among themselves to, upstage each other. Among those who are, like you rightly said, those who are agitating for restructuring or self-determination and all that in the South, including the Middle Belt, what we have discovered, and which you have stated clearly, is that it is only those in the West that are still hung up on no election for whatever reason. They even went to court, I think last week, I mean 2 weeks ago, saying that they want the court to stop the election because of for whatever reason. All the people that they were meeting with, if we take it, let's take it from the biggest, the Afenifere, that meets regularly with the Middle Belt and the South South and the Niger Delta, and they call themselves the Southern Middle Belt Leadership Forum or something like that. All of them, including Afenifere, they have now succumbed to an Igbo presidency. Then they said it is because of fairness and justice. How can there be fairness and justice when you said there is no restructuring or anything like that? The entire quest for self-determination itself or restructuring is a quest for fairness and justice. So you can't separate the two, but that's another question. So they are now saying, let's give the presidency to Igbo on their part. On the what I would call the militant part, those who are in Ninas from the West, they started by saying they are no longer part of Nigeria, constitutional force majeure, and all the rest and all the rest. And then they split. That is the Yoruba section split from Ninas and all that. And but Ninas itself started talking about referendum, even though they started, one of the issues is the way they are running away from the truth. So when we started out saying let each nationality conduct its own referendum, it's very clear. All these groups, they were running away from it. But when they even embrace the idea of the referendum, they still refuse to recognize that it must be held by the constituent units, the nationalities. So when they split up, Ninas is now talking, they were thinking that the United Nations will help them out. Nothing happened. Then they came down to, okay, let's have a referendum. Did they specify who is going to hold the referendum? But, they are no longer talking about no elections again. So, but the Yoruba that split out from them are still talking about no elections. But you see, the problem is that when you declared a constitutional force majeure on an entity, let's leave the legal aspect aside. That means you don't recognize whatever binds you together with that constitution. Now you approach the same court that was created or that was sustained by the same constitution that you are violating to come and make a pronouncement on what you want. I mean, so you can see a lot of confusion. And it's quite unfortunate that it is only in Yoruba land that you find such efforts going on. So I will simply liken it to an attempt at cutting one's nose to spite one's face. I mean, the bottom line in Yoruba land, whether we support Tinubu or not, it's not the issue. The bottom line is they just don't want Tinubu in the race. That's the bottom line. Otherwise, all their former partners are making what I would call political peace with their political leaders, and they are agitating for what they want. But here we are, still clinging to a straw. That's what I will call it. They are clinging to a straw. So there's a problem in terms of conceptualization. There's a conceptual problem in Yoruba land as to exactly what we want. And that conceptual problem is not because we are not educated, not because we don't know what is going on, but it's simply because of our political myopia. That is those groups that are still clinging on to the no elections, even though when they are talking about no elections, they are still talking about referendum. So you can see the confusion that you start asking yourself, okay, you guys are talking about referendum. Now, IPOB is now asking their governors to work towards that referendum. That is IPOB. They are now saying, like a turnaround. You, in Yoruba land, you are not even asking your governors to do something similar. All you are saying is you want the court to proclaim that the elections should not hold. So, in the history of political struggles for autonomy or national liberation and all that all over the world, there are some times that certain actions are taken that are actually injurious to what we say we want to achieve. So when everyone is almost taking care of themselves, in Yoruba land, we are not taking care of ourselves. So at the end of the day, let's even assume that the Yoruba struggle succeeds. Those who are saying they don't want elections and blah, blah, blah. Those who are looking for elections will succeed in their own areas. We will be fighting ourselves. So our former allies in the self-determination struggle will become our enemies because they will get what they want. So if they get what they want, in best case scenario, they get what they want, you have an Igbo president in the interest of fairness and justice, and we are left out in the cold. Are you now going to be fighting against the Igbo for self-determination? Because you already gave them the presidency so that you can address fairness and justice. So are you now saying when they get it, that there's no fairness and justice, or that they will give you fairness and justice, then you don't need to fight your fight again? Or if the IPOB and the South governors find a way to organize a referendum among themselves and they reach any agreement they want to reach, are you now going to now say, okay, that is their own? We just want Nigeria to, what? So there's a conceptual confusion. Whether it's deliberate or not, I don't know. But there's a conceptual confusion that doesn't situate the whole quest for autonomy or Yoruba nation or whatever they call it within the political matrix. And that political matrix has to do with the reality of the politics on ground. Tinubu as an individual is not our problem. We may not like his politics, we may not like whatever he's doing, but that's not the issue. The issue is, how do we engage our own political establishment to address and advance what we want, Tinubu or no Tinubu? But when we now reduce everything to the person of Tinubu, what is happening is what will be happening. Others will be doing their own. Among all the politicians in Nigeria, is he the worst person? No. There is virtually no difference among all of them. So, but they are now, after the 2023 elections, for example, after they have taken whatever it is they want to get, they can revert back to what they are doing. We see what happened with the Niger Delta before Jonathan became president and when he became president. We see how the whole country was almost burnt down. And when they got what they want, they went their ways. So, in short, you see, again, lessons are being taught day by day. But it appears as if our people are not even seeing the lessons. These are people that will sit down to go and you want to do this, you want to do that, you want to sokedile, you want to sheba, you want to shawo. They are now backtracking and supporting their own for whatever reason. And of course, we know there's everybody will talk about and we want to develop the country. We can do this, we can do that, we can industrialize this, we can make my state the greatest black state in the world. Everybody will be talking that. But we know that there are structural issues, there are human issues that need to be addressed before we even attend to that. But why should we be the ones whose heads will be used to crack the coconut? That's the question that is facing the Yoruba now. Why should we be the ones that are now being made a fool of by our own political incompetence? So that is a question that the Yoruba will have to address. I don't have any answers to. I have my own answers, but it's a question for everybody. That it's like, and everybody, it's easy. You go to the social media, they will start quoting how Hubert Ogunde, Yoruba Ronu, and everything that they do, there is no Yoronu there. You hardly find the Yoronu there. Because what is the Yoronu in Nina's now talking about a referendum, or IPOB talking about a referendum and making peace with their governors, and you are sitting down in Yoruba land trying to destroy your governors? What is the Yoronu there? And then you say you are doing some kind of pan-Nigerian or solidarity or whatever it is. So that is why I said it is a question for every Yoruba to address. Not that we don't have answers. We have provided our answers, we have profiled our answers, and we are moving along the line of our answers. But the question is, those who are afraid to toe the line that has been established, why are they afraid of it? Why is ILANA, for example, afraid to ask the governors like IPOB is asking their governors? Why? When the last time Governor Akeredolu said, where did the Yoruba meet to do something, we expected Baba Akintoye to say, okay, yes, we haven't decided, but this is why we should decide. He didn't say that. So all these things are, they are mind-boggling. Let me put it that way. They are mind-boggling. That's why I said the question is for every Yoruba to address. We have our answers. We have made it plain. We are promoting it and we are pursuing it. So the answers are clear.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I would quickly, because on the home front, we still have just about two, although they may be just short discussion. And I know that most times you really don't want to talk about other groups because there are many groups that are involved in the movement for Yoruba liberation.
Yes.
But when things comes up, we have to
Yeah.
throw some questions to you on on the development because all those things are counted as development
Yeah.
within the Yoruba liberation movement.
Yes.
So the next one I want to bring up is actually about a report on Yoruba KoYa, YKLTF,
Yes.
and their current call or support for local government autonomy. Now we've had severally that majority of people, not just only within Yoruba land, in other parts of Yoruba too, other parts of Nigeria too, believe that if Nigeria will actually practice federalism as should, we should not be having some of the problems that we're having now. And many groups within Yoruba land, irrespective of what they call their cause, all of them seems, apart from those people that want Yoruba completely out of Nigeria, even those people that want Nigeria out, that want Yoruba out of Nigeria, they still saying that okay, if Nigeria will allow Yoruba to have his space to be able to breathe within Nigeria, to practice true federalism. Interestingly, we've had to put something in front of federalism because federalism should be federalism. There
Yeah.
shouldn't be something like true federalism.
Reinforced.
So, but people believe that if we have federalism as should be in Nigeria, then things should not, people should not be rising up and claiming that they want to leave the country. But we also know that with federalism, it is not the federal government that will decide for the federating unit on how to conduct its businesses. So if we have groups within the struggle which is looking for federalism, but they are also supporting local government autonomy, which is not part of federalism. Would we consider this to be a sort of lack of understanding of how this works, or are people just trying to look for something to grab from the federal government?
I think it is both. One, like I said earlier, there is a conceptual problem in Yoruba land of even what they want. Like you mentioned, federalism is simply, in a general sense, it's simply a question of a center and a subnational, the national and the subnational, in a coordinate relationship. It's only between two people. It's not between three people. I mean, three entities, two entities, not three entities. So ordinarily, it should be a relationship between the center and the federating units. And like you said, it is not the business of the center to determine how the federation unit defines or governs itself. Having said that, again, which is also linked to the first part of this discussion, that the conceptual problem of what autonomy entails. You see, people have, especially in Yoruba land, and we need to reiterate the whole concept that local governance is it defines itself local, right? Okay. But when I think it was in 1976 or 1978, the military government established what they call a Dasuki panel to reform the local government. Now, please bear with me. I will just make a slight excursion into that territory. Of course, the Dasuki that eventually became the Sultan of Sokoto, that's the Ibrahim Dasuki. Now, he, coming from that background, and we know what the military did in Nigeria with the Fulani Caliphate and all that, the kind of local governance structure that they had, the emirate structure that they had in the north, was now introduced into local governance throughout the country. That was how the central government became a dominant power in the local governance. And when we talk about our Obas and all the rest of them, they had an allocation separately for them from the federation accounts. So when we see our Obas doing what they are doing, you know what is going on. So having said that, the whole concept that a group, now I'm not criticizing, this is not a critique or an attack, it's just a statement of fact. You cannot be, just like Afenifere is talking about having an Igbo president in the interest of justice, as if the quest for federalism is not a quest for justice itself. The same thing, you have an organization that says Yoruba KoYa. You KoYa, by definition, that's a Yoruba word. That's a Yoruba, the English translation of Yoruba KoYa is we reject, what is Yoruba in English? We reject oppression.
Oppression, yes.
We reject oppression. And then you are lining up with an oppressive system. It doesn't make sense. If you KoYa, you call what the central government wants to do to you, even at the surface level. When Lagos state government and some other Yoruba state governments try to create local government community development associations, the Obasanjo regime refused to release local government funds to them, saying they have no right to do that. How can you tell the state government they have no right to create local governments? So it is, all these things are not fiction. And then you have an organization that wants to reject oppression, embracing it. So it's even a negation of their own definition. It's a negation of their existence to embrace what they call local government autonomy. There's no autonomy. How do I put it? Local governance is local governance. So the first thing they should have done is to define who are the federating units. What are the federating units? Once you define that, that is the end. If you look at all the federal constitutions in the world, all of them, and it is there for them to look at, they always start with defining who are the peoples in that entity. They will either define them by their names, their nationality names, or by their geographical expression. We, those who are living here, we, those who are called here, we have now decided to form a federation. That's how all the constitutions started. It is only, that's why they have true federalism in Nigeria. When you said federalism is federalism, they have to qualify the one in Nigeria, because Nigeria calls itself a federal state when it is not. So it is a false federalism they are practicing. So those who are calling it true federalism will now put true there to show that their own federalism is different. So, which is not necessary, but, that's the reality in the case. So when an organization now behaves like that, one, it has a conceptual problem, like I said. Two, some people just want to do something just to be seen, to be doing it. When I saw the photographs of the leaders of Yoruba KoYa and the local government saying they are holding a rally, I shook my head and I almost cried. I almost cried when I saw the photo that, what is this? So it's like, and maybe they don't know what to do again. So let us do something. But you see, you can do something that will be injurious to your health. You say you want to lose weight, and then you say, okay, let me do something. And you start some kind of exercise that can be injurious to you. Yeah, you are not losing weight. You are just making, So, I don't know how to put it. We have a big problem in Yoruba land because, again, when we say some of them in that group will say, there's too much corruption in the state government. Okay, if there's too much corruption in the state government, ṣé kò sí corruption ní central government ni? Or the corruption in the central government is not even worse than what we have in the... So why should you say because you are running away from the corruption in the state government and you are now putting all your eggs in the basket of the central government? And then it is the same central government that wants to carry out Ruga and control the waterways and all the rest of it. So if you now agree with local government autonomy and the central government is going to pay for it, the central government will now give money directly to that local government to create the Ruga you say you don't want. The central government will give money to that local government because of the autonomy to subvert the waterways system in your area. So everything, that's why I said it's a conceptual thing. Again, it's not an insult. All of the leaders of that group are very well educated and well positioned. So I believe they should know what they are doing. But apparently on this call, they didn't. And we should not... I'm not insulting them. I respect all of them. But let us call a spade a spade. On this issue that they are supporting local government autonomy, they are absolutely wrong. And they should reverse their role and their support. There is no doubt about it. Otherwise, we are not getting anywhere. They should simply reverse what they have done. And even if they don't, let's assume that they have a problem in terms of definition. What are our political scientists and all in the past, in the 70s and 80s, when issues arise like that, we had professors in universities. Billy Dudley was there. Billy Dudley, whether you agree with his politics, his philosophy or not, he is an intellectual voice in the thing, and they will explain everything. So why are we shying away from that? And then just to show that we are part of the struggle, and then we will start supporting things that are not even, that are inimical to our progress. That's what it is. And again, it's not an insult, it's not a critique, it's just a statement of fact. And, I'm not using this platform to denigrate anybody, and I don't need to denigrate anybody. But the point is, that position is not tenable. And if they want to come and defend it, then we can then, talk about it. But it's not necessary to even start arguing because it's simply wrong.
Okay, thank you very much for that, sir. Because what the federal government could actually come up with is that, we've given you local government autonomy. We're talking about restructuring and co. Obviously, we've now given the local government autonomy for them to act. Whereas, because it's the federal government that is still funding that local government, then that means the federal government will actually have a sort of hold or control over those local governments, and those local governments executive could also be used against this state executive.
Just like they are doing with the states. We say that the states go to Abuja cap in hand to collect monthly allocations, and we know what happens. So you now want to repeat the same thing at the local government level. So you have a state that is already beholden to the center. You now have a local government that is also beholden to the center. And because the state government has no control over the local government, eventually, within 5 years, you will not even have a state government. What you will have is a local government and the central government. The state government will just be there if they want it to exist. It will just be there in name, because all the local governments will collect everyone. If the central government funds the local government directly, what is the use in funding the state again? Because everything that the state does, the local government can do. So the state government will wither away. We'll now have a local government and the center. And then what kind of, so that's why I said it's conceptual, and we don't need to be doing things simply because we want to be seen to be doing things. That's not going to get us anywhere. Let us do things properly in a holistic manner, and we will see the results.
Right. I'm still going to ask you, which is actually looking at the groups when you talk about the issue of conception.
Yeah.
But before I come to that, the last one will take about the home issues that we're bringing up. That from the home, you briefly mentioned it, but then I actually want us to talk about it briefly. I'll still mention that I know that you don't always want to talk about other groups, but then if things are being done in the name of the Yoruba people, and we think that yes, people have opinion how it could be done better or how it could be done well. We believe platform like these will be a sort of a place where people could get information and they could go back to think on those information and act on them. So I'm going to ask you about the ILANA OMO OODUA Worldwide, the legal action that has been launched or to stop the Ekiti and Osun poll. I have been unable to get the other resource where it was claimed that the leader did mention that they know that they can't win the federal government, and I know they were making reference to taking up illegal action against the government to stop the Ekiti and Osun. But the last news that we've received is that they've now launched a legal action on the federal government to stop the Ekiti and Osun in the first instance, and of course, they will be dealing with the 2023 election. Uh, on these, and with what we have on ground, what is or are your views about this?
Well, thank you. We mentioned it earlier. I think in the first part, number one, again, is conceptual. Okay, let's take it from the back and work our way forward. Let's assume they want to use it as a strategy. You can say, okay, although we know we can't win, but let us take it to court so that we can use it to mobilize our people. Okay, but this is the problem with that strategy. What alternative do you want to propose to the election? So if you want to go to court that you know you can't win, and even if the court wants to be charitable, they will keep on postponing it until who knows when, if they want to be charitable. If they don't want to be charitable, they will just dismiss it out of hand. You know why? The reason is very simple. You have said that the Constitution is fraudulent and is of no effect. The Constitution that is of no effect recognizes the court, or the court exists based on that Constitution. So what you are saying essentially is telling the judge that it doesn't exist. So the judge will say, well, if you say I don't exist, why are you coming to me for a determination? But that's a different, so let's leave that aside and let's look at it as a tactic that they are using. Okay, so you want to say, okay, we know we can't win, but let us go there so that when we erase it, all the contradictions of the Nigerian state would be legally this and this and this and this and that. Okay, fine. For you to do that successfully, you must provide an alternative that we are in court. So when the court says this, you have this to say. If you don't have that, your strategy is failed. It's a failing strategy, because what will happen is that definitely there will be adjournments and all kinds of stuff like that. And then you'll be forced to flow with the direction of the adjournments and what they are doing. But if you have your own alternative on ground, so that at every point in time, it is your alternative that you will be pointing out, regardless of what the courts do. All you need to do is to say, yes, we've gone to the courts. If they take a decision today, you can appeal it tomorrow. If they take a decision in your support, the defendant can go to the appellate court and appeal.
Yes.
If they give a thing against you, you can go and appeal. So the courts are there to be used. But more important than that is the alternative that you have. So that it is that alternative that people will now be exposed to when the courts are doing what they do best, adjourn and do all kinds of stuff like that. But that is even lacking. In a sense, we can even say the IPOB people are smarter, in the sense that they are now asking their governors. They are not even approaching the court. They are saying their governors, okay, give us a date for a referendum, or work towards giving us a date for a referendum. That's a political demand. But here, you have now put all the eggs in one basket and say you want the elections to disappear, to be cancelled, without even saying when the elections are cancelled, what will replace them. Now, you are not saying the court will declare that if they cancel the election, I don't see it in the reports I've read. If the court agree to cancel the election, who will be in government? How will law and order, peace and security be sustained? That is, should they now appoint ILANA people to run those states? Or should they run? And then, so all these things are there. And then even if it happens like that, the government can now come in with its doctrine of necessity and say that to prevent the breakdown of law and order, they are putting a military guy or some kind of emergency law. And then they will start running the place. And then you fight. You now have to start another fight that you don't want emergency law. So what do you want? Unless you say, put us in power. So again, everything boils down to conception. Like I have said, that when you don't, and I'm not trying to be arrogant or anything like that, when you don't understand what you are fighting for, or let me put it this way, when all you know is what you are against, and you are not profiling what you are for, what you stand for. It's one thing to say, I stand for Yoruba nation. I want Yoruba nation out. That is a slogan. Anybody can come up with a slogan. What you stand for is a strategy that will replace what you are against. A slogan is not a strategy. A slogan is just a slogan. It's a tool to mobilize people. What you stand for is your strategy to replace what you are against. So if you are against the 1999 Constitution, you are against the unitarization of Nigeria, you are against everything that Nigeria is. What you stand for should be an aggregate of what you are, what you want to replace it with. So if you say you are against the 1999 Constitution, you must be able to say, like those who are saying it, we want to replace it with 1960 or 1963 constitution. Okay, so the question will now be, how do you go about doing it? So that is the essence of what to stand for. It is not simply a question of we don't want this, we don't want that. So that's why I said it's a conceptual problem, it's a theoretical problem, it's a philosophical problem, it's a definitional problem that people unfortunately are carried away with the slogans without necessarily understanding the meaning of the slogans that they are saying. I'm sorry to say that. Again, I'm not about, accusing anybody of anything. It's just my own understanding of the situation. But we've had the best example I always use was this in 1968 in France, when the French students, they have almost, taken over the whole country from de Gaulle. Everything was in shambles. Then they asked the leaders of the movement, okay, so what do you stand for? They said, don't worry, we will take it up along the way. Overnight, they lost everything. The leader of the group is still alive. He's now in the European Union, Daniel Cohn-Bendit. He's now in the European Union, I think, under the Green Party, and he's just relaxing. So it is always vital and always important to know what you stand for. And if you have a correct definition of what to stand for, it means you have a strategy towards achieving it, so that your stand, you will not just be against anything. It is what you stand for that will be propelling you to fight against. That's why you now find, okay, even if you look at our situation, it was very obvious right from day one that what the Igbo won, they won the presidency. It's very clear right from the day one. So every Igbo organization, whether IPOB or NINAS or anything, they were all doing their thing to make sure that they arrive at that point. And when everybody is now coalescing around that point, you can now, that's why they are all now withdrawing from their constitutional force majeure, this and that, and then trying to relate with their governors. But on our side, it was not like that. All they were looking for was the slogan. All they were rooting for was the slogan, Yoruba Nation now. We want this now. We want that now. We want this now. And then they'll be cursing everybody out that doesn't agree with them, forgetting that what they stand for has not been defined. It's just mere sloganeering. So that was how the Igbo were able to now position themselves into blackmailing the others into accepting what they want. So it's a lesson. I hope ILANA will also draw a lesson from that. I'm not saying they shouldn't go to court. I mean, that's their own way of doing things. But what we are engaged in is more than that. That there are some things that are very obvious that don't need any debate in this struggle. One of the things we should do is to admit to our let me use the word appreciation of what it entails, and not simply substitute our limitations for the reality, if it makes any sense. So I hope as time goes on, they will be, when we started on this Yoruba referendum thing, we engage everybody that we know, including the ILANA people. And of course, they went their way and we went there. But again, they are now saying, okay, we want a referendum. They want to deny. We can't go to the United Nations. It can't do you any good. They didn't listen. Now, but even up till now, they are yet to embrace engaging our governors and our. So there's a there's a sense of satisfaction on our part that we are steady in what we are doing, and we are making progress. We are not happy that our people are being tossed to and fro on questions of what we want, like those who are supporting local government autonomy, or those who are going to court and all that. They are even worse than distractions. They will just lead us to defeat. It's as simple as that. But we won't take them on. I mean, we won't. No, let's do what we all need to do, and we will arrive at, And again, sorry because things are just coming in like that. One of the major issues in Yoruba existentialism is this. Yeah, we have several metaphors, several idioms, and all that. Then they will say, "Oh, no, come waja." But the question is, you have to define what the oja is. That you can't go to the same destination in a multiple manner. You can only go to a destination in a particular manner, even if there are other destinations, because the moment you start going in different destinations, you are not going to you are not reaching the same goal, because one of them will have reached the goal before the others, and then they can dictate what the others will do. Some of them, when they are taking a detour, going in a roundabout way, they will lose focus, so they won't reach the destination. So most of the times we seem to be imprisoned within the limitations of those idioms. We don't expand the idioms to meet the reality of the day, and we should start doing that. That yes, there are many ways to skin a cat, as they say, but it's only one cat. So you can't have 100 people trying to skin a cat in different ways. It will no longer be skinning a cat. They will just jar everything in different directions, and you will not have a cat at the end of the day. So we have to be mindful and conscious of the dynamics of thoughts. The dynamics of thoughts, that idioms or thoughts are not static. They have a dynamics, and they should be explored and not be imprisoned by them.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We will be surely will be going to the second segment where we'll be talking about that main topic, because every of the topic we have been dealing with is just under that one big topic: Africa in the Global Village and the Yoruba Liberation Movement. But before I leave this section, we've heard about the Yoruba KoYa and then ILANA, which we've spoken about. Is there no platform where, I know it might not be that people have two, but is there no platform where all Yoruba groups, Yoruba, those agitating for liberation for Yoruba, I mean, not um, the groups coming together as one, but is there no platform where people could say, okay, this is what we want to put forward, and allow others to give their opinions and views about it?
Well, I don't know whether such a platform exists or not, but the problem is this. Even if such a platform exists, and there have been attempts at such platforms in the past, if that platform exists, what will happen is that everybody will be coming with their little pet theories, and if you don't agree with their theories, they will leave and then go and set up another platform seeking for the same thing. And that's what has been happening. The real problem is that none of these attempts work, simply because there is no defined, I mentioned earlier on, there is no defined strategy, there's no defined pathway, there's no defined concept. Again, the question of conceptualization, there's no defined what we stand for. Again, it's not a question of slogan. Let's say, okay, we say, okay, the only way or the best way to achieve what we want is for Mr. Yerokun to be president. Using that as an example, you to be our president. I mean, you can be our president now. Why not? Yeah. So then we say, okay, why is that so? Then we state the reasons why. So if 10 of us agree that that is the way to go, it will be easier for us to have a single platform because we have charted a pathway that we are saying for this to happen, no, this has to be in place. For us to achieve where we are going, we must put Mr. Yeroko in this position. Then we all work towards that. But if we have 10 groups, and one group says Mr. Yeroko should be this, another group says Alagba, Femi should be that, another group says ILANA should be this. So we all come together, the 10 different groups, and we start trying to figure, there'll be nothing. And then for whatever reason, maybe there are some elders in some of these groups say, okay, because Baba has spoken, let us follow what Baba, even if Baba is wrong. So the problem is in that conceptualization. And again, what I would say, humility. Conceptualization and humility, that even if your organization has developed its own parameters for the past 30 years, for example, which has not yielded any result, and you find somebody that comes with another paradigm, you should at least say, okay, let us consider the merits of this new paradigm with what we have been doing. And if you find that it's more achievable, then you should simply flow with that paradigm. But it's not happening. Maybe that's an utopian idea that I have, but it's very crucial that we interrogate every paradigm, and on that basis, that is the only basis we are using. There was a time a letter was written to us self-determination groups. I think you are aware of it also. And then they said, okay, let us create a central committee or a central command. And under it, they have an organogram. What happened? What became of it? Nothing. It is very easy to see that and say, okay, you have 1,000 groups in Yoruba land. Let us have a central committee that will compose of this and this and this. So everybody will come with their highfalutin ideas, both reasonable and unreasonable. And they will, by right, demand to be on that committee. So what's going to happen? Nothing. So the major problem that we are facing is in the articulation and acceptance of a particular pathway. Fortunately, we can always take each suggested pathway and relate it with the reality, political reality on ground. Again, I'm not of course I can promote Yoruba referendum, but I'm not promoting it now. I'm just saying, let us look at it. When we say it, let all the nationalities conduct a referendum within themselves, when we started out, some disparaged it. They said it can't work, it can't this, it can't that. They will go to the United Nations. They didn't even get to the United Nations, so they stopped midway. They are now talking about referendum. Those who we have talked about it, everybody is now inserting the word referendum in all their statements, which means our original position was the correct position, because everybody is now aligning with it, even if they are yet to come to the full realization of what it means. But everyone is now saying, so that gives a sort of confidence. And that is what I'm saying. Again, I'm not promoting ourselves. I'm just saying when we look at what is happening in reality and what is being proposed. Now, if they they are saying they are going to court to stop the election and all that and all that, and if they fail in the court and there is election, who do you think the governor will even listen to? Is it those who are saying, Mr. Governor, let us have a referendum, or those who are saying you have no right to be governor when the man becomes the governor? So that's what we are saying. It's not a question of whether one likes them or one doesn't like them, or they do we are looking at some political realities and authority and office and what can happen and what can be achieved. So we are saying, okay, you are governor, just like the IPOB people are just doing. Okay, Soludo, you are the governor, right? Don't do this, don't do this, do this. They presented it. So it is now left for Soludo to say, I don't want you, I will do this. Or, oh yeah, let us work together and get it done. Abi? So that is what we are saying, that we are, we presented our own way forward, and everybody is now inserting it into it. Okay, so let's come together and then say, now that we have even agreed with the general roadmap, let us see how we can now actualize it. And we are not saying they should not go to their court. You can go to court, but let us also have an alternative on ground. So I think that is the major problem that we have: the lack of political humility, the lack of the deficiency in conception, theoretical deficiency, philosophical deficiency in terms of articulating or understanding what we want to achieve. So once we are able to overcome both obstacles, I think was it Abiola that says the sky is the limit? Abi is the beginning, then whichever one it is, whether it is the limit or the beginning, but it is still there. So it's
Right. Thank you very much for that. We've basically dealt with the home front news. And viewers, thanks for staying on with us. We're still on Africa in the Global Village and the Yoruba Liberation Movement. We've dealt with the home front, topics around the home front. And in the next segment, we will be going into actually the international sector so that we can look at the context of the global village, Africans' involvement in that, and of course by extension, what Yoruba liberation could learn, glean, uh, could learn and glean from what is happening at the moment. So thank you very much, Alagba Femi or Odedeyi. We're still on with you, and we'll come back right to you after this short advert. So please do still stay on with us, sir.
thank you. Thank you.
Right, welcome back, viewers. You are still right on to OY Media Scotland. My name remains Samuel Uludari. We still have Alagba Femi Odedeyi from the Yoruba Referendum Committee in this studio. And remember, what we're dealing with is Africa and the global village and the Yoruba Liberation Movement. You are most welcome back to the program, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, we have you right on there. So we move into this next one, and we are kicking off with uh, the issue about Ukraine,
Hmm.
and we have this report that 17 African countries abstain from UN votes on Russia on Wednesday, May 2, 2022, the United Nations General Assembly adopted a resolution that demanded that Russia immediately end its military operation in Ukraine, which has entered its second, of course, going to the third week now. However, it's been reported that out of the 193 member states of the United Nations, a total 141 countries voted in support of the resolution. 5 voted against, but then we have 35 other countries which abstained. Out of these, we have 17. And that cuts across Algeria, Angola, Burundi, Central African Republic, Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Madagascar, Mali, Mozambique, Namibia, Senegal, South Africa, South Sudan, Uganda, United Republic of Tanzania, and of course, Zimbabwe. And there's been more talks about this. First of all, it underscores Africa's position or place in the global politics. In fact, it was reported that Eritrea actually voted against that resolution, citing what they were, the support they've had from this other side, and what the Western world have done to them. Now, of course, we also have many videos. Some of them we shared it in the past few weeks of how some other countries also have called out the NATO, the United States, and others on what they've done in Africa, which they believe that that's the way they go about that. They do not have the moral right to call Russia into question. And I want to take you right on this. In fact, the president of Russia, that's Vladimir Putin, and even through the one of the ministers, actually queried the United Nations and US about the death of Muammar Gaddafi. I would seek your indulgence to have that shared with us. Okay. And then we now want to actually look at, when we consider these things, especially what are the position of Africa at the moment in the world politics, whether is Africa waking up, or is Africa just following the same path that he has always been. But I'll take that opinion after we have this shared to us.
Who gave coalition forces in Libya the right to eliminate Gaddafi? Well, that's the question Vladimir Putin's been asking during an official visit to Denmark. The Russian premier also said NATO has effectively joined one of the warring sides in the conflict. More responsible action should be taken instead. Bodies Daniel Bushell joins us now live for this in Brussels. Daniel, so the Russian Prime Minister has effectively lashed out on the operation there in Libya.
Yes, he's made a speech in Denmark and he was very angry. He says that Gaddafi is not the best person in the world. Sure, he's made many mistakes, done many bad things, but that does not give the coalition the right to bomb indiscriminately. His words were that they are bombing Gaddafi's palaces in Tripoli every night. Now, coalition said that their plan was not to get rid of Gaddafi. So his question was, Mr. Putin's question was, why are the coalition forces obviously making this effort to go after Colonel Gaddafi himself? Now, we also heard that the experts here in Brussels have confirmed that there is bombing going on by the coalition forces, which is not being covered by the media here in the European Union. Mr. Putin added that oil was a key interest for the Western powers, for the European powers who have gone into Libya, that they want to get rid of Gaddafi and install people who are more favorable to the European Union so that European companies can control the oil reserves. Let's have a listen to exactly what Mr. Putin had to say.
The coalition said destroying Gaddafi was not their goal. Then why bomb his palaces? Now some officials have claimed that eliminating him was in fact their goal. Who gave them that right? Did he have a fair trial? Returning to the no-fly zone, the bombings are destroying the country's entire infrastructure. When the so-called civilized world uses all its military power against a small country, destroying what's been created by generations, I don't know if that's good.
Mr. Putin said that they have to give the Libyan people time to sort out.
Can't hear you.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes. Okay.
Thank you. Now, the situation in Russia and Ukraine has now entered into a discussion about NATO and United Nations or United States activities in Africa. If you remember very well, sir, last year we had 2 coups in about 3. But out of those 3, 2, the military that took over are actually leaning towards using mercenaries, contractors from Russia, why they are asking France and co to take their armies off their ground. So it seems that there's a bit of leaning towards Russia. So back to my question. Now, if we connect this with those 17 countries which decided to abstain, because they used to say something in our place that silence is, yes, is acceptance or something like that. So if they abstain, that means they know that, yes, you are not going to count our votes on something that is against Russia. So is Africa waking up? One, or they are just following what has been historical?
I think, well, it's a historical thing in the sense that, one, African countries played a major role in the early 60s up to early 70s when there was this non-aligned movement. The non-aligned movement was born with, Yugoslavia, Egypt of Gamal Nasser, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Sukarno of Indonesia. And the aim at that time was to create a balance between the East, which was led by the Soviet Union then, and the West, which was led by the USA, and NATO and all that, so that the world will not be turned into another carnage, that there is a need for a third force that will balance the two powers, the two major powers. And so they created that non-aligned movement. And, most of the African countries that were independent, they were independent at that time, they were part of that movement, and they succeeded up to a point until Sukarno was overthrown largely by Western forces. Nkrumah was also overthrown largely by Western forces. Nasser also died. So the movement sort of became, shall I say, leaderless, but still active. And that was why even when in Angola in 1976, when the apartheid South African forces invaded Angola and tried to take over the place, Cuba was a member of the non-aligned movement. Fidel Castro was still the president. So they sent their soldiers to go and fight against the South Africa. Of course, the South Africa was supported directly by the West at that time. They were supporting the apartheid government in South Africa. So they sent in their soldiers, virtually blackmailing the Soviet Union to send in weapons. And then they fought off the South African invasion and pushed them back to South Africa until, the Soviet Union itself collapsed due to different kinds of internal political reasons inside the Soviet Union itself. And then the Eastern Bloc became neutralized. And so you have a dominant Western Bloc in place. But, sometimes when things like that happen, arrogance can come in, and then they will say, yeah, we are now in control of the world and all that. So gradually, many African countries at that time, even with the existence of the non-aligned movement, were also susceptible to influences from the West and from the East. So there were a lot of military coups on the African continent, essentially instigated by the West, and then they installed their regimes in place. But after the demise of the Soviet Union, the limitations of Western support for these regimes became very, very apparent. So you have a new generation of African leaders who are neither West nor East nor even non-aligned. Maybe some just found themselves in power. So when these things are taking place, when they say when two elephants fight, it is the grass that usually suffers. But apparently many of the African grasses are now saying they don't want to suffer anymore. They are now saying, look, you can't use we can't become cannon fodders. Some of them are military people, some of them have military experience, some of them are aware of the history of their countries. Some of them are aware of what Mali, which I think Mali was the one that threw the French out.
Yes.
Mali was very much aware, was in the anti-French colonial movement at that time, being part of the Casablanca group that became the OAU, and supporting all the liberation movements and all the rest of it at that time. So a lot of people that knew what their predecessors did probably now came of age, and that they are not going to allow themselves to be even as powerless as they are now, that's why they abstained and still trying to play neutrality on both sides, which is commendable for them. That we are no longer going to be cannon fodders in all these things. And one of the painful realities of the West is that they talk about freedom and human rights and all that, but they are the worst violators of freedom and human rights, both internally and externally. That's a different question. So I believe that these African countries are now wisening up to the reality that they cannot be simply tossed to and fro. So they have to send a message to the world powers that it was like, I've forgotten who made the statement in the 60s that we are no longer I think it was Patrice Lumumba, we are no longer your monkeys that you can just toss to and fro. And I think that is the message that was passed on this abstention. And I think they should be commended for it, because actually the war is not, the Russia-Ukraine war is avoidable, patently avoidable. But I believe that there are some warmongers somewhere who are prodding, who wanted a world war. You can see how some statesmen or supposed statesmen will just mention war as if it's a casual thing. They will just say, yeah, we will fight them. We will do so they see it as a casual pastime, despite the fact of the First and Second World Wars and the potential Third World that will even be more devastating. But they just they are just cavalier about it. So that should send a message to everyone that this thing is not as simple as it's being presented. Something that is avoidable, but that is being treated casually like that. I think for once, the Africans that abstained should be commended. At least they still have their heads on their shoulders.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Actually, we also even have, but I don't think I will have to bring that up because the South African Parliament, where
Yes.
people were defending their side, those people that believe
Yes.
that yes, we should do this, no, we can't do that, and
Yeah.
go. So, yeah, I mean, like you said, I think it's commendable that at
Yeah.
least they could state that, listen, we
Yeah.
want to stay neutral in this case.
Yeah.
We can no longer be used
Yeah.
against others.
Yeah.
But also, I want to also mention and take your views about this as well. And at the end of the day, we are going to come to link this up to
With
the
the
Yoruba liberation going on. Some of the countries, even within NATO and the West, even Europe as well, they've been very careful on taking a hardline step against Russia. For instance, Germany has been extremely careful because it was reported that the gas for Germany that is supplied by Russia, and Russia could actually turn that gas off. I mean, if they want to look for alternative, it's not going to happen in one day.
Yeah.
Not probably, it might not even be 1 year.
Oh, yeah.
And the same thing happens to the UK here. Is not that much talked about. I'm going to play this video, and the video I will watch it, and then we'll now come back to what we're talking about. But the video is about somebody doing a sort of hard stance drama, but also calling on the UK government that, I mean, there's more they could actually do, but they are not doing it because, yes, they can send weapons to Ukraine, but there are some things here within the UK that the UK government is supposed to take action on. But they know that if they take action on them, the UK economy will shut down.
We've shut down.
So we'll watch that and then we'll come back to the discussion.
So am I okay to kind of say, the New York Times UK correspondent, Jonathan Pye? I need a title. What for? Twitter. I mean, Putin, he's waving his massive KGB willy at us. Come and have a go if you think you're hard enough. And we're not hard enough. It's like an out-of-date button mushroom down there. What do you think of the tie? Too much? I don't really know what to say. For the first time in my career, there are no words or expletives that can do this situation justice. War crimes are happening right now, from where I'm sat, about 1,000 miles that way. When it comes to sanctions, the EU are going full pelt, seizing billionaires' yachts, their villas, the whole shebang. Problem is, of course, they're still paying Russia for 40% of their gas, 350 million euros a day. So Putin has no shortage of cash rolling in to finance his war machine. And if Europe gets too whingy, he can just turn the gas off. So Putin's got Europe by the short and curlies. What? Pubes. Here in the UK, we don't have quite the same problem. Only 5% of our gas comes from Russia. Here, we're reliant on something far more precious: Russian money. For 20 years, Putin has been using illicit money to fund an oligarchy of billionaires to keep his corrupt regime in power. And for 20 years, those Kremlin-approved oligarchs have been coming here to invest their ill-gotten gains via a loophole that allows people to buy property in the UK anonymously.
These are homes
valued at tens of millions of pounds, a cluster of Russian jewels.
Welcome to Londongrad, Moscow-on-Thames. 87,000 homes in Britain were bought through offshore companies by anonymous millionaires. At least £1.5 billion worth of those are owned by Russians with direct links to the Kremlin. London is the money laundering capital of the world, bar none. What an accolade! The London Laundromat, a one-stop corruption shop for anyone who needs to hide their money away with no questions asked. We have let it happen for years because it's how the UK makes money. It's the only industry we have left. Without it, we'd just be a car park for France. Open Britain, where anyone, arms dealer, drug dealer, people trafficker, warlord, or in this case, hundreds of Kremlin-backed millionaires can rinse their dirty money clean by buying up the most expensive houses in London. And, for the most part, leaving them empty, which inflates the market so much that the rest of us have to sell a kidney just to buy a shed. How about we seize all the oligarchs' mansions and hand them over to Ukrainian refugees? Or actually, I'll have the 5-storey mansion in Kensington and the Ukrainian family can just have my place. And when they run out of houses to buy, they buy other things, our football clubs, our newspapers, our vodka. And we were happy to do this, because since the Cold War, Russia hasn't really been a threat at all, has it? I mean, this was Boris Johnson not 4 months ago.
The old concepts of fighting big tank battles on European landmass are over.
That aged well. Speaking of Boris Johnson, he's up to his tits in it as well. Since he became Prime Minister, Tories have accepted £2 million in Russian donations. I know in American terms, 2 million is the political donation equivalent of tipping the bellboy, but here we're much more strict. We put a limit on the amount of dirty, illegal, kleptocratic money that our main political parties can take, which has an upside for Putin because it means British politicians are incredibly cheap to buy. In 2020, 14 members of Johnson's government received Russian cash. The Tory party chairman even runs a luxury concierge service that helps oligarchs buy property in London. For years, our government was handing out golden visas to hundreds of millionaires, many with close ties to the Kremlin, buying entry to our country and then influencing policy with their fat checkbooks. So, of course, while the oligarchs' yachts and villas in Europe have been seized, their London mansions remain untouched. Because the dreadful, terrifying truth is, stronger sanctions against Putin are in danger of hurting us more than it does him. And this was Putin's plan all along. For 20 years, he's been slowly neutralizing us as a threat by using our own greed against us. Putin is a vicious, brutal war criminal, a mass-murdering tyrant, but a mass-murdering tyrant we can do business with, right? So what does that make us? Gutless. And Putin, more than most, knows quite how gutless we are. He's been taking the piss for 15 years and watching us do nothing. In 2006, he murdered a political enemy in a busy London restaurant with polonium. In retaliation, we expelled 4 Russian diplomats. The diplomatic equivalent of doing this. In 2018, he did the same again with a chemical nerve agent and nearly took half the cathedral city of Salisbury with him. UK's response? Prince William didn't go to the World Cup final in Moscow. Oh, that'll teach him. But it didn't, did it? Putin is an enemy who has form in overwhelming use of violence, punishing the civilians for choosing democracy. Shame on him. But shame on us. What kind of a democracy allows itself to be willingly undermined by a dictator? What sort of a democracy turns a blind eye when an authoritarian interferes in its elections and murders innocent people in its streets? What's the point of democracy and freedom from tyranny if we welcome money earned through tyranny? But here we are. Our entire way of life, Western democracy, revealed as a charade, a thin veneer behind which is hidden all the money we can stuff in our pockets. A story we tell ourselves to make us feel safe and moral, when in fact we are neither. It's so f***ing depressing. There you go, I found the words. F***ing depressing. What do we think about UK correspondent for the New York Times? I think it's got a nice ring to it.
Okay, that is talking about Putin.
Putin, yeah.
The oligarchy and how they've invested in the UK to the extent that now that the UK, which is obviously sending weapons to Ukraine, is finding it difficult to actually take some action here in the country because taking those actions will severely affect the economy of UK. The same thing with what we've spoken about Germany and some of the European countries that felt that if Russia really has to move, then there might be serious problem. Already, before the Russian-Ukraine war, petrol here, I think you call it gas in the United States, was around 140, a pound and 40. As of today, is about a pound and 75. So it kept rising, not just every week, almost on daily basis. And that shows the importance of Russia in world politics and business.
Yeah.
So now taking this right back to home, I know that probably, or let's say I suspect, not know, suspect that probably those people that are calling for Yoruba nation out of Nigeria, or the ones that believe that United Nations will come and split Nigeria into pieces, probably they are not thinking of the role or the position that Nigeria has in international or in the global village. It may not be that Nigeria is actually taking as much or that much like the strength that Russia, Germany, France, and co has, but there are could be things they are taking from Nigeria, and they will not just end that. I mean, we have history of Shell in Nigeria and some other companies that have been in Nigeria even before independence, and they continue to have their way whichever government comes into place. Now, I want you to help us to situate what we've just looked at, where even some countries that we believe are strong, like the United Kingdom, now being a sort of has its hands tied on what it could even do beyond just talking that oh no, this thing was happening, but then within the country is sort of untied to do some things.
Yeah.
And back home also, especially in Nigeria, where obviously today we have lots of debt almost from everywhere,
Everywhere.
and which the government will have entered into some agreements, which the creditors will know that if anything happens to Nigeria, their investment is at stake. So, would you be kind enough to situate what we have in this global, the global space or sphere, to situate it with the liberation movement in Nigeria? What is achievable? What are the probable paths that some countries will take when it comes to the balkanization of
Yeah.
Nigeria?
The first thing is every debt or every economic relations that Nigeria has currently is binding on the country Nigeria, whether we like it or not. So let's say the Yoruba one, those who say they want to leave, they want to, and there's no war and they agree to leave and everything like that. The first thing is, how is the debt going to be negotiated? Are we going to say, since the money was not spent on our land, we are not going to pay it. We can't say that because, they negotiated it on behalf of Nigeria and they stated what they wanted to do with it. So all these things are there that has to be taken care of. Of course, the international treaties and all the rest of it, they have to be taken care of. See, the difference between the Yoruba nation or sovereignty and all that, and Ukraine and Germany and all these things are that these European countries are already independent countries. So what they are doing is against the backdrop of their being sovereign. What we, the Yoruba, will be trying to do in Nigeria is an attempt at being sovereign. They are two different things. And if you, listening to the other guy, you can see how Putin and Russia try to integrate themselves into the Western economic system. Of course, he called them several names. But if Germany is going to be that dependent on Russian oil, that means, Russian gas, that means there's an integration of their economies. So you can see after the fall of the Soviet Union that there was a deliberate attempt to integrate Russian economy with the West, with all these things that we are hearing. So somehow there's a breakdown in whatever it is. And of course, there's also the mutual deterrence or nuclear deterrence that they can't just go and fight just like that. So if we are looking at it from that perspective, and we do know what that correspondent said is equally applicable to Africa, that I think Putin is even a mild case of what we are witnessing in Africa. If everything they said about Putin is true, about dictatorship and all the rest of it, we have worse scenarios in Africa. And all the monies and the economic resources of Africa are also located or looted and taken to Europe. The good case, look at what's his name, the guy in Equatorial Guinea, Bang or whatever his name is, and look at the situation in Equatorial Guinea and the kind of lifestyle the guy is living in is it in Portugal or France, or even in the formerly liberated movements in Angola and all that. We see how they have take all the money out of Angola and placed it in France and Portugal and all the rest of it. So what they are accusing Putin of doing is what they are doing regularly in Africa. So if we now want to address that by saying we need to, in Nigeria, for example, we need to break it into pieces and we will live happily ever after. It's a fallacy. Fallacy in the sense that the Europe created the nation state paradigm for the rest of the world. That was where all these national sovereignties came about, and that was what they tried to impose on Africa by lumping everybody together and trying to making a nation state out of them. So if you want to address the problem they created, you cannot use their solution to address it, because a nation state is not an answer to the defect of a nation state. And we can see it happening in Eastern Europe. When the Soviet Union collapsed, all the former countries in Eastern Europe, of course, they were independent, although they were part of the Eastern Bloc. But all the countries inside the Soviet Union that left the Soviet Union, Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia, Ukraine, Georgia, and all the rest of them, that became nation states, became embroiled in wars of survival. Estonia and all the rest of them, they quickly joined NATO before Russia found its feet. They joined NATO. And one of the problems that Ukraine is having today is its attempt to join NATO, because Russia had already found its feet and doesn't want to allow NATO at its back door and see the result, the devastation of Ukraine itself. So if the nation state that was created in Europe, which was largely monolingual, monocultural, and all the rest, has become a problem, we cannot address it. We cannot address it with the same solution and say we want to create a nation state which is monolingual and all the rest, because the nation state in Europe, as was created, existed at the direct exploitation of the rest of us, as it were. So if you want to extract yourself away from that, you will simply be putting yourself more into their orbit, because, that's their own system. And that is the problem Russia and Europe is having. Because, like I said, if you look at it, there is an ongoing movement to integrate the Russian and the Western economies through all these things. So then you start wondering, why is it breaking down? If not because they want to ensure that Russia does not remain a nation state, so that they can divide up Russia among themselves. So if the Yoruba in Nigeria say we want to leave the rest of them, again, the best of times, no conflict, no war. They just say, okay, say you Yoruba, you want to leave, yeah, go. Right? So the thing is, you have a Yoruba nation state that will now be forced to relate with other nation states on their own parameters. All this talk about we will have free education, we will have governance. No, it doesn't work that way, because you are part of a system. You are part of a world system, and that's what we are saying. All the European or Western industries and all that exist, they will still be existing. You are not going to run them out of town, or maybe you can run them out of town. So what will happen is that you become part of their paradigm, and then you become an obstacle to the other nation states in Africa that doesn't toe your line, and then you become a permanent war zone, because that is what it will mean. And we can look at an example in Eritrea, the Eritrea that is supporting when Eritrea got its independence from Ethiopia, when they fought the 30-year war or something like that. And then we see how Eritrea itself became a garrison state. In Eritrea, it became a garrison state, and then they tried to ensure that the Tigray region that was standing for federalism in Ethiopia was destroyed, if not for the resilience of the Tigrayan people, because Eritrea was supporting the central government in Ethiopia against the Tigray people. And Eritrea itself, being a garrison state, became an appendage of either the Middle East power players, something around that area. So you discover that the nation state paradigm as a multilingual this and that cannot work for Africa, and that is why the whole thing about having a multilingual, multicultural entity, the problem with it is that it is being run as a monolingual entity, not as a multinational entity. That is the problem we have. And that is the solution. That was what happened minus the, what eventually happened, the only way the Soviet Union came to survive before its dissolution was because of the recognition of that multilingualism and multiculturalism, which gave rise to the Soviet Union in the first instance. And when the powers were centralized inside the Soviet Union, that was what led to its dissolution and the problems we are having now. So the solution to the world that was created in 1648 by the nation state of Europe is a multinational state, not a national state. And if we combine it with our own history, okay, before Nigeria came into being, they talk about amalgamation, this amalgamation, that. Before amalgamation, we know the history now that the Fulani Danfodio already conquered the Hausa states in the north,
Yes.
and they were coming to the south, Ilorin, and then they were coming to the south. And then the Oyo Empire dissolved in the process. But the Ibadan army was raised up to fight the Fulani, and the Ibadan army was going to go into Fulani territory before the Ekiti Parapo, against their own administration, put a stop to that. So if either the Fulani had succeeded, that is the Danfodio, if it had succeeded, there would have been some kind of Nigeria. Whether we call it Nigeria or not, it wouldn't matter. But there would have been some kind of control. If, on the other hand, the Ibadan army had succeeded in defeating the Fulani, we will still have some kind of Nigeria, whether they call it Nigeria or not. So there was, in Africa itself, there was a conflict of the emergence of states, of, shall we call it, nation or multinational states. That was what led to the Ekiti Parapo War in Europe. That the Ekiti were against the unitarism of Ibadan.
Yes.
And then they started, the war, and then they checkmated Ibadan's foray into Fulani territory. So whether there was amalgamation or not, something that resembles Nigeria would have emerged. And what will have happened is we are either a Fulani or an Ibadan area, whether they call it Fulani country or Ibadan country, depending on who have won the battle at that time. So at every point in time, and if it had happened, because it would have been a multinational entity also. Just like if you look at the history of Yoruba kingdoms and, and all that, it's essentially some kind of federal system. Each one with its own kingdoms and obas and all that. Even at the height of Oyo Empire, the Oyo Empire being the strongest and the largest and the most powerful, but you still have the kingdoms in their different domains and all the rest of it. So the whole question, and if it had, unlike even the Fulani control of the north of the Hausa states, where they were able to neutralize Hausa language, the assimilated Hausa language, appropriated Hausa language, and became the rulers of the place. So the dimension of the solution is not in replicating what Europe did. Europe gave the world the nation state paradigm, but that's not the solution to counter it, because what you will end up doing is becoming, and we are talking about best case scenario, that okay, there's no war, there's not going to be any fighting, there's not going to be anything, which is not possible. It's not going to be like that. So the thing for us to consider, both in Nigeria and in Africa, is what kind of paradigm are we trying to create? It's very easy. Those who are saying Yoruba nation now, They will cite Czechoslovakia broke up. This country broke up from Soviet Union. This country broke up. Okay, so now that they are broken up, what are they experiencing now? Each one of them is either under the tutelage of one or the other. All of them, even all the former places in the Soviet Union, they are either for Russia or for the West. So they are the grass. They are the grass. And the Yoruba nation or Yoruba country or Yoruba, we don't have the economic or political wherewithal to do all these things, to become, So what we need to address is the contention between the nation state, which is monolithic, monocultural, or a multinational state, which takes into consideration the multiplicity, the multiculturality, and then build on that strength as a counter to what Europe had introduced to us, bearing in mind that the nation state paradigm was a product of Europe that was imposed on us that created our problems in the first case. So it can't be our solution. So, I mean, that's the way I will look at it. And like I said, we also, I mean, you start wondering why the rush. You see, the rate at which not only the sanctions were imposed and the warmongering and all the kinds of things that they were saying, Russia was already integrated into the Western economy by even the statement by the correspondent. Germany's dependence on Russia gas, all of these things. So Russia was already integrated into the Western economic model. So then you start asking yourself, so if that is the case, why do they want to demonize this guy? That should be a source for thought, at least, if not for concern.
Yeah, there was even, a report that the United States obviously turned to Venezuela for gas.
Yes,
Venezuela is an ally. Is an ally of Russia.
Russia.
And
So,
the Saudi people just ignored President Biden's call and call.
And they are now worried that Syria is talking to United Arab Emirates. So there's an integration of. So the question is, why the demonization at this point, and what lessons do we learn from it? That when we now start making our own projections, how does that help us? And we know the stories in Sudan. They like citing the example of South Sudan and this. We know the story of how some bureaucrats in the U.S. State Department ensured U.S. support for Southern Sudan simply because they want to checkmate China in the Sudan.
Yes.
The Afghanistan war, we know how some Afghan professors, manipulated the State Department to get into Afghanistan. The guy, I think Karzai or whoever the president was one of them. They just presented, and of course, we know what happened in Iraq. So when these things are happening, it's not just out of the goodness of their hearts. So when we want to emulate them, then we have to see, look at what has happened, learn from it, and then create our own paradigm, which earlier on was what I talked about, conceptualization, philosophy of liberation, and things like that, which will inform on what we do.
Yes. Thank you very much for that, viewers. Thanks for staying on with us. Like we mentioned, and which is actually the focus here, that Nigeria is part of the global community, just like every other African state as well. And whatever happens in Nigeria, we have like international impact. And because of that, also, whatever is going to happen in Nigeria is something of interest
To
to
the
the
rest of the
world
world.
powers. I mean, we can till tomorrow we can still talk about the United Kingdom, which happens to be the colonial master, former colonial master for Nigeria. Many people believe that they still have a bit of hold on what happens in Nigeria, and people have mentioned how in 2014 the
The expedition.
APC presidential aspirant,
Mm-hmm.
then Major retired Major Muhammadu Buhari, had to come to UK to see the then Prime Minister, David Cameron, and how they openly, both the PM for UK as well as President Obama, they openly campaigned for Buhari, despite some of the things they've said about him before.
Yeah.
So they still have some level of influence and control over Nigeria. And we're talking about UK and US, but there are other countries as well. Germany, you have Julius Berger, which has been in Nigeria for a very long time. We had it then during the, not too sure whether it's during the Abacha or IBB,
Yeah.
where it was reported that they were not even taking any money from Nigeria again.
Yeah.
They get paid in oil, in crude oil. That
Mhm.
shows the extent of their influence on Nigerian government. So, and then we have other countries like that. So there's nothing that is going to happen in Nigeria that will not attract the attention of
The
these people.
attention.
Some have invested into Nigeria. They will protect their investments, uh, which by all costs. We've had, if we look at the history of Africa itself, how it was colonized, and some of the things that are happening in DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, and some other ones today, we see some of these companies having machineries that are on ground and
Right.
protecting their interests. So there's nothing that will happen in Nigeria that this vested interest, credits to the former CBN governor, who is now an
The
emir.
governor.
I say it's vested interest. So we have this vested interest, and there's no way they will not protect their interests.
Yeah.
So when the point here is whichever movement or whichever course or whichever route that any group is taking towards Yoruba liberation, we should be conscious of these
Yeah.
cases that are clearly, I mean, we can't wish them away. And we can see what is happening currently in Ukraine, Russia, Germany,
Yeah.
France, and of course UK and the United States. How some things cannot be done. I mean, it's not that it can't be done, but they will not do it because it will affect their own economy as well. And that's what we want to bring to our people today.
Yeah.
That let's think about not just yes, Yoruba nation, and that's it. It doesn't happen that way because Nigeria is part of the global community, and there are countries that have interests. China has interest in Nigeria, IMF. Of course, we've mentioned about Shell, we've mentioned about the United Kingdom and co, and they will protect that interest. So, without knocking out those people who wants to go to United Nations to come and break up Nigeria, it will not happen. United Nations will not do it. United Nations only gets involved when a country
When the
is at
crisis
war.
has become, yeah.
And it's become war, it's become a humanity. There are humanitarian crises, you have refugees and destructions. That's when they will now come in because then it also gives them the opportunity to look at which is the best part they want to align with, and they will say, okay, we will help you to reconstruct your portion, but also they will give you terms that you have to agree with. We've seen that is what happened in Libya. We've seen that's part of what happened also in Iraq and Co. So it's just that our people should think about this why they are pushing for that.
Yes. In addition to that, you can even see what the United Nations itself did in the Central African Republic and even the Congo we are talking about, that the fact of UN intervention does not mean peace or development for the people concerned, as we have seen. I mean, we've seen it all over the place. So we need to think outside the box, and we don't need to be parochial in our attitude. Whatever it is we feel about anybody, whether they are eating cows or they are not eating cows, it's not the issue. So the issue is what kind of paradigm are we bearing? Are we bringing to bear on the political necessity? And for Nigeria, we just need to defeat unitarism. Once we defeat unitarism, that is it. So then we have federalism or true federalism.
As the case will be. Thank you very much for your time, Alagba Femi Odedeyi from the Yoruba Referendum Committee. People that have stayed on with us, or those people that join us, or even those people that will watch it, this video, this live broadcast at the end of the day, we just want you to know that on this platform every 2 weeks, we have Alagba Femi Odedeyi. And here he's been looking at what's happening around the world, or so, but most importantly, the agitation for a referendum for the Yoruba people. The committee believes strongly that it's the people that can decide what they want, and not until when the people are involved, we cannot have a constitution which starts with we, the people of so place.
Yeah.
And that is very, very important that the issue here in Nigeria is a political issue, and we should involve our politicians. Like you mentioned, it's not whether you like them or you don't like them. That's not the issue we have now. What we have on at hand now is that they are in the position to pass the referendum bill into law. It's already with them, the Yoruba referendum bill. It's already with the 6 Yoruba or Southwest states houses of assembly. It's already with them, and we need them to get this done. Charity, they say, begins at home. But before we leave, I'll always give Alagba Odedeyi to do a sort of a roundup for us, especially on the Yoruba referendum bill that is with the Southwest state government. But shortly before then, let's have this.
Tẹ́bí ń ṣòro bí èwe kí ló dé? Ẹ̀yin ṣe èèyàn bí ọkà, èyí ti ṣe àgbà ìlú àṣòro bí èwe. Ta ni yóò padà táyé ṣe o? Ẹ̀yin àgbààgbà ìlú kí ló dé o? Tẹ́bí ń ṣòro bí èwe kí ló dé? Ẹ̀yin ṣe èèyàn bí ọkà, èyí ti ṣe àgbà ìlú àṣòro yèwé. Ta ni yóò padà táyé ṣe o? Ẹ̀yin àgbààgbà ìlú kí ló dé o? Tẹ́bí ń ṣòro bí èwe kí ló dé? Ẹ̀yin ṣe èèyàn bí ọkà, èyí ti ṣe àgbà ìlú àṣòro yèwé.
Right, and so over to you, sir.
Well, thank you for the opportunity once again. Everything that needs to be said, well, we can't say everything that needs to be said because there will always be things to be said. But I want to draw our attention to the first part of that poster, which talks about what we expect and how we expect Nigeria to be governed. We said Nigeria to be governed by a federal presidential council. Each region will choose its representatives to the presidential council. Now, that alone redefines the nature of governance in Nigeria and will redefine the nature of governance in other parts of Africa. So instead of fighting each other for the control of the center, where the center will become a collective responsibility of everybody. And when you have a collective responsibility, that means you have something to contribute to that collective. So you are not going to be sharing anything in that collective. You are going to be bringing things to be shared in that collective. So that gives room for every nationality to bring its best, and it will be an example for the rest of Africa that we don't need to be fighting each other. And that's what I meant earlier on when I was talking about a multinational state instead of a national state. And more importantly, it will create, many of the nationalities in Africa are spread across several countries, in different countries and stuff like that. So if we are able to get this thing done, we will be able to address that problem, that the fact that we're in this country doesn't mean you can't partake in the benefits of your nation that is in another country. So a lot of things, a lot of inbuilt inequalities and injustice that are in the nation state paradigm will be addressed by this provision. And it is what I will call a historical necessity. And like we said, we don't want to be a victim of Europe, and we don't want to be a small grass that suffers when they start fighting their wars, because it will also allow us to establish who we are in the world, and in fact command their respect, because we are not following their pre-planned methodology. We are introducing a new paradigm. Of course, it's not going to be that easy and smooth sailing. There will be conflicts and stuff like that, but which can be resolved. So that's what we are saying, and that is why we expect your support and your interest and your involvement in all of these things. That yes, we are saying we want to engage our governors, our political establishment, and you don't even have to be our member or a member of the committee to play your part. There may be people you can talk to in the establishment that we can reach. You talk to them, show them this thing, and explain to them what it means. It's available for everybody. And if they have any questions, they can contact us. You can contact us either on this program or by email or anything. And then, we discuss all these things. So that is how to build a movement, to build a movement and to proceed towards the sure success that is on the way. Otherwise, we'll just become victims of all kinds of manipulations. Like I said earlier on, let us look at ourselves, not from the prism of 1914, but from the prism of pre-1914. The Ibadan people were already in Offa, the Ibadan army. They were already in Offa. They were going for the Fulani there before the Ekiti Parapo and started fighting them, and then everything scattered. The Fulani were coming to the south. They were stopped in Oshogbo. So regardless of 1914, something will have happened. Either the Fulani will have won, or we will have defeated them. Fortunately, they didn't win. And although unfortunately, we didn't defeat them. So, but the point is, let us shun all this emotional attachment. 1914, they signed a document, they didn't sign a document. They are all irrelevant. The point is the march of history. The march of history points to the fact that Africa itself was engaged in a conflict of dominance conquest that was truncated by colonial intrusion. That's the fact of history. So when we now talk about restructuring or true federalism or autonomy or anything, what we are saying is we are connecting back to that history to make the history of today. So it's not a truncated version that we are colonialism created for us. What we are saying is we are trying to come into being as we are created by God, and then to move forward from there. And it is doable, just like we have been seeing that, sorry, in Nigeria, I'm not taking no. Every time they have the elections are coming, everybody will say Nigeria will collapse if this doesn't happen. They have been saying it for, and Nigeria has not collapsed. Though. Somebody will get there and they will start doing the same thing all over again until the next 4 years. Another group will say Nigeria will collapse. So let us put a stop to all that. And the only way to put a stop to all that is to get our own political establishment to allow us and to encourage us and to enable us and to empower us to determine exactly how we want to live, not only with each other, but also with other peoples in Nigeria and West Africa for that matter.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your time. And until another 2 weeks, because within when we will be meeting you again.
Hopefully we'll have engaged our people and then we'll have something to
report back to the house.
Yes.
Okay. And of course, supporters of the of Yoruba referendum, you've heard that the posters are out there. You can actually print it and distribute it. You don't need to come to the party before you get it, to the committee rather, to get the posters. You can. The PDF is right on there. Yoruba Referendum Committee is on Facebook. Just type it in. You get on there, you get the poster. Give it to your printers, print and distribute. That you will have done your own part. So thank you very much again, Alagba Femi Odedeyi. Like they will say in my place in Yoruba, where I'm a Mariba.
Adúpẹ́ ẹ ṣé gan. Ibi náà dáhùn padà ní Yorùbá ẹ ṣé gan.
All right, thank you very much. And for our viewers that have stayed on with us, thank you very much. We really appreciate your patience with us on this program. And do remember that we do have the live broadcast is both going on Facebook and on YouTube. It's also been spread across some Facebook groups and pages on Facebook. So please do check on them. Please do share it as well. And if you have any question or any comment about what has been discussed, please do not hesitate to get across to us at OY Media Scotland. Either you put the comments right on the particular broadcast, because that makes it easier for us to monitor it, or you send us a message. We've got OY Media Scotland right on Facebook page. We also have OY Media Ibadan Nigeria, so you can get across to us on any one of them. Thank you very much for your time today.
Àgbààgbà ìlú. kí ló dé. Ẹ̀yin ṣe èèyàn bí ọ̀gá, èyí ti ṣe